I was just reading your bio, your dossier, and I forgot that you made one of my favorite movies about the Amish teenagers.
That was my first feature documentary, Devil's Playground.
It's amazing. Devil's Playground, so exactly. I saw that at Sundance. That won a slew of awards, too.
It did. They've all won lots of awards, actually. I say that modestly. But no, I'm super proud of all of them, and they've all scooped a bunch.
I know your resume is insane. You were a Fulbright scholar. You came to Tisch.
I like you already.
It's like 1, 2, 3. I'm like, gee, can I actually do this interview? And it's amazing.
I'm so excited to be here. Okay.
So let's talk about what made you do this film. I mean,
I really believe that nuclear weapons, to be horribly serious for a minute, are the most urgent and important threat that we face, and also the one that we really need to be paying attention to and that we haven't been. And I felt like when I was a child, when we were younger, we had this idea in the 80s that nuclear weapons were a real problem, and everyone was very aware of the issue. And yet it was such a difficult issue to be aware of, and it was so depressing and scary, and how to help. And so the issue didn't go away, but we sort of wanted to stop thinking about it. We wanted to believe it had gone away. However, denial, beautiful thing that it is just not going to help solve the issue. And I knew that we had to really turn our brains to it. Now it's a really good time to turn our brains to it, because we have this amazing president who's got these incredibly progressive and cool policies, and is doing so much between fissile materials, the START Treaty, the problems we have now with proliferation and terrorism really mean that even if people used to think that these weapons had deterrent value, which people can argue about, the new situation is so different in the world, and it's so counterintuitive that these weapons that feel so powerful can actually make us more vulnerable. They can make us less safe and not more safe. And so trying to kind of get in there and explain that issue and give people the tools to sort of understand the news. I mean, there's so much news about Pakistan, about Iran, about North Korea, about fissile materials, about Al-Qaeda, about loose nukes, about Russia, about treaties, START, Medvedev, Ahmadinejad, all these things. How do we get to grips with it's such a hydra, of an issue, and yet it really requires some holistic and cool thinking. And what's wonderful is that we have all these leaders that are actually that have looked at the same data we looked at when we were making the movie and thought, wow, we've got a problem here, and we've also got solutions, but we really need to work together to implement them. And so hopefully the movie's going to really bring people up to speed on what's been going on in this issue since we all last checked in, sort of in the 80s. And I really want it for young people to understand what on earth has happened here.
Well, you present it in a way that is, it's kind of, I hate, for lack of a better word, it's kind of fun to watch. I mean, how you explain how the atoms, and when you take through the process of actually building a bomb and what it takes, and
awesome graphic design by Panoptic.
The graphics were fantastic. How long does it take you from your thinking about this as possibly your next project to getting here at Cannes?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Is it about 2.5 years, probably?
2.5 years, and that's working on it exclusively?
I actually have another film that I began before and finished like half an hour ago that's also here crazily, called Wasteland. So what's weird is that I sort of started that before, so I sort of did 2 in 3 years, sort of as a little sandwich, and that's a completely different movie. That's in a garbage dump in Brazil, but that's won lots of awards too, and I'm super proud of that. And yet they couldn't be more different. We've got more world leaders in Countdown to Zero, and more masters of the universe, and more of an important issue just looked at directly. Whereas the other movie is a beautiful story in a garbage dump about an artist and a bunch of incredible characters that sort of winds up being big just because of the humanity of it, but it couldn't be smaller in its own little way. So they're really different experiences, hanging out in a garbage dump with the poorest people I've ever met, and trotting around the world, engaging, President Musharraf, Carter, de Klerk, Tony Blair, etc., etc., etc. A nuclear smuggler. That was an interview.
That nuclear smuggler was amazing. What is the thing that, doing all your research and obviously being cognizant of the issue and choosing to make a documentary about it.
Yeah.
What was the thing that surprised you most in the process that you learned that you didn't know going in?
You know, you think it's not possible. You think because the stakes are so high with these weapons that nothing could go wrong because the consequences would be so unimaginable, just unimaginably unimaginable. Einstein said these weapons have changed everything except for our way of thinking, and thus we drift towards unparalleled catastrophe, he said. But they've changed everything. I mean, they're too big to even really get our brains around thinking about. And I guess you sort of think, well, that protects us, and we've been okay so far. Nothing's really gone wrong, or, you know, they just seem like they're not going to, nothing bad's really going to happen. We can sit there and rely on them for deterrent. But when you start to look at it and you start to realize that each of the steps that it would take, for example, for a terrorist to blow up New York City, a city I lived for a long time and can still sort of consider home, and I think that in the ways so many people around the world consider it their home because it's just such a cool city. And you understand that each of the steps required to blow up New York City entirely, gone, crater, Manhattan, have not only could happen, but actually has happened. And you sort of think, well, what's to stop it? And there isn't really much.
Well, we just had in New York City the van in front of the Lion King. I mean, that was just, you know, luck that bomb didn't go off, that it was amateurish or not quite synced up properly.
Exactly.
But it just could have gone the other direction.
Exactly. And then you start to get into and you realize that the next time that could be a nuclear device, and now is the time to make sure that it's not.
Well, one of the things that was compelled me in this film is that you talk about, well, actually, the intent to blow up the world in New York or, you know, London or whatever it is. But then there's also the accident, the probability of an impossible thing happening. When the I forget who it
Scott
was.
Sagan. He's so fantastic.
When he talks about, well, we were lucky that Putin wasn't drunk, and Putin realized when there was an accident, you know, the miscommunication about the submarine.
According
You're like,
to his script, he should have released the deterrent. Shocking stuff in that movie.
You're like, wait a minute, this has actually already happened. It already got down to like 10 seconds, and this would have happened because this person just forgot to turn the light switch on. Basically, it boils down to the mistake that someone made initially is so minor, you never think it could result in.
And I was fascinated to find out that there are theories about how accidents happen. You think accidents are, you know, chance occurrences that couldn't be predicted or sort of theorized about. But there's, you know, who knew there was a whole science of accidents, how they occur, how they can be prevented, how they can't be prevented. I mean, ultimately, Scott Sagan, who's this genius at Stanford in the movie, talking about what's he called, the problem of redundancy problem, where even if you build in redundant safeguards to try and prevent something happening, there's no possibility of reducing the risk of something happening to zero, something bad happening, that is. Because actually all the safeguards you introduce into a complicated system can introduce new errors and new complexities that really actually make things less safe rather than more safe.
Everything becomes more sophisticated in a way. It brings us backwards. No, the same thing about the plane that traveled all across America with 2 huge warheads on it, and that just happened in the last 5 years. It's not.
And in the US, which is almost certainly the best secured of all the arsenals. So when people say, "Oh, what's the problem?" You know, in future, why not let 25, 45 countries get nuclear deterrence for themselves? Why shouldn't they have it? You think, but even if no one means to set one off, you know, the risk of an accident not being zero as a matter of as time goes on, mathematically, statistically, ultimately that means that one will go off, and one is, you know, more than enough in this circumstance. And I think I always say, you know, the Dr. Strangelove was subtitled, I think, how to what is it? How to start worrying and love the bomb, whatever. How to stop worrying and stop the bomb. And really, this is the whole point of the movie: is we don't want to have a nuclear bomb go off before we start scratching our heads and saying, "Wait a second, we've got to deal with this issue." Hopefully, this movie can get people, you know, behind the momentum that we really are experiencing in the political sphere about this issue, and get people really motivated to make sure bad stuff doesn't happen. basically.
Well, on another note, how's Cannes being for you?
Oh my
I
goodness,
see you
it's
look
such a
fabulous
dream.
in a red dress, and
I
out
like
here
you
by the
already
pool.
so much.
I mean,
I know,
come on.
it's not bad. You know, as filmmaking experiences go, you know, I've climbed Everest. I was camping in the Soviet nuclear test site, worrying
Not
about...
looking like this, I assume, right?
No, I was in like a full radioactive suit with Geiger counters clicking and camping in rainstorms. It was not a highlight of an experience. I've done some tough stuff to make my movies. I think part of what makes documentary film is fantastic is when the filmmaker really is unafraid to go places that ordinary people can't go, and to get that access to really get people inside and seeing things that they need to see to understand, but they can't get there themselves. So I'm the one that gets to do that. So when I get to come, sit by the pool, have a glass of rosé, talk to some lovely people about the movie, I must say it's not a bad day in my work schedule. And I've always had a dream about Cannes. I just think of all the amazing places I've been privileged to go as a filmmaker, and I'm really so happy with my career. But Cannes, somehow, the Croisette, the Palais, the red carpet steps, they play my favorite song, the theme for, the Carnival of the Animals, Aquarium by Saint-Saëns. Such a beautiful, dreamy song. And when I was, my first job was actually in Paris. I used to be a second assistant director in Paris and come down here in the train and watch all the movies and try and gate crash and get spare tickets from people. And it's just so exciting to be here as an actual filmmaker with my name in giant letters besides, Woody Allen and Jean-Luc Godard, Lucy Walker. I mean, it's a dream come true. I sort of think, did I get nuked?
Yeah.
And I'm in filmmaker heaven somehow. It's really good.
Oh, it's great. Well, it's great to meet you.
So
and I
great
loved
to
your
meet you.
film, and
Well,
like I
so
said,
much.
I've loved your ones in the past, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's great.
Such a
All
delight.
right,
Thank you.
Absolutely.